So Michael Knowles was featured on Jubilee's Surrounded series, where he went head-to-head with 25 LGBTQIA+ activists. And of course, he brought up the issue of transgenderism and trans ideology, as he has a now infamous quote about transgenderism. And he actually went head-to-head with 3 trans individuals, one of whom we recognize on this channel. So I figured no better day than today to react to Michael Knowles going head-to-head with these individuals. So let's get right into it.
My next claim is that transgenderism should be eradicated from public life entirely.
Here come the Nazi allegations. You want to eradicate people? You want to kill people?
Hi.
Hello.
Blossom. She, her, hers powerhouse.
Blossom Powerhouse, lovely to meet you.
Yes. Go ahead. I want to know your...
Go ahead. I want to know, you came to the chair, so you have to bring the argument. And of course, we know Blossom on this channel because Blossom is trifling, okay? Blossom brings problems everywhere he goes and is always trying to start drama and tell some lies. If you guys can go check out our previous videos on Blossom and the drama that took place on this channel if you want to know more, but I digress. Let's get into these arguments.
Your ideology around transgenderism, something that doesn't exist. It just sounds more like conservative propaganda. So I kind of want to know a little bit more about what you're trying to communicate.
Okay, I think for all of history everywhere, people have understood the human person to have something to do with his body. So like your body has something to do with who you are. Now there is an alternative view, which is called Gnosticism. It's a view that our bodies don't really have anything to do with who we are, that the body is maybe even evil, and that our true selves have no connection to our bodies. And I see in the transgender ideology a kind of Gnosticism that says that you could look like a man, you could have a man's genetics, you could have a man's genitals, you could have a man's everything, but if you feel on some deep level that you're really a woman, then you are really a woman. And I don't think that's true, and I think that the social effects of that are really bad because it leads to the depriving women of their legitimate rights. In some cases it leads to rapes, notably in the last few years, and it also leads to women losing their sports competitions. And there's
I see an uncomfortable face, but I have not heard a lie. I have not heard a lie.
Scholarships, and it's just disordered and false. And it also leads to more people adopting this identity, which leads to very high rates of anxiety, depression, and suicide. So it's bad for everyone, and it's not grounded in reality.
Oh, I don't even think you understand what you say sometimes.
I've never heard like a more clear-cut, concise argument against transgender ideology. And then to retort back, I don't think you even understand what you're saying is wild work. Wild work.
I don't think you even understand what you say, because when we talk about these rape cases of women in the restroom, they're coming from cis men like you. So let's be very clear where it's
that's
coming
not
from.
true. In 2021,
excuse me, do not interrupt a black
well, I'm just trying to correct you. Well, I would never interrupt a black woman.
No, thank you.
You made
Here's the thing.
I would never interrupt a black woman.
Think about me as a black trans woman. I am not a threat to cis women, and I think it is harmful that you are going around here spewing that rhetoric, weaponizing this rhetoric against trans people.
Weaponizing facts?
Transgenderism does not exist. We as trans people exist. We are 1% of the population, and there is a lot of power in the trans identity, because you are sitting here spewing something to me that doesn't really exist.
I'm not spewing anything. I'm just stating facts plainly.
I have lived experience. You don't, and you never will. But I do have a question for you.
I have lived experience.
What if one of your kids came out as trans? How would you react to that?
God forbid. I mean, I would.
Okay, we really got off the topic here, because the topic was women being raped by transgender identifying individuals. Now, Blossom says that's not true. In fact, it is cis men who are raping these women. Now, you can go through a litany of stories of transgender identifying individuals assaulting women and young girls. J.K. Rowling has done extensive work on this topic. You can check out her X feed if you want to find story after story. We've covered on this channel different stories of transgender identifying individuals attacking women and men. If you want to look up one story just right now by going on Google, type in the name Hannah Tubbs, and you will find a male who assaulted a young girl, a little girl, sexually assaulted that little girl. went on to identify as transgender, has the whole name changed to Hannah, so we can substantiate these claims. Now, Blossom is going to make the argument that there are cis men who are weaponizing the trans identity in order to assault women, and I in no way deny that that is a fact, that there are men who take on the transgender identity as a means of getting off easy on assaulting women, finding new pathways to assaulting women, but the obvious question is, what's the difference between a cis man and a transgender woman? Blossom, please let me know what the difference is between those two individuals. And you can't give me a difference because it doesn't matter if you've gone through the medical processes. It doesn't matter if you've changed your name legally. You can simply self-identify as trans. So what is the difference between a cis man and a trans woman? I don't know. And in this whole laundry list of cis men or transgender women that have assaulted women, are we to believe that none of them actually believe that they are transgender? None of them are actually experiencing gender dysphoria? I'd think not. But let's see if Blossom has anything to say on that matter.
Obviously, I love my children, and I would try to do what's best for my children. And the best thing that I could do to be respectful and also to be conducive to their flourishing is to tell them the truth, which is that they're not really girls.
Oh,
absolutely.
Come on. I can't even imagine your relationship with your children. No shade. But
That's great. That's a great relationship.
I just cannot even imagine that. But here's the reality.
It's just insult after insult. I don't think you understand what you're saying. I can't imagine your relationship with your children. I've yet to hear a simple, basic fact that in any way rebuts what Michael is saying.
We exist. Again, people like you do not have the intellectual capacity to hold conversations like this because in a minute you're going to reduce this down to genitalia, and then we're going to have to shift it somewhere else because obviously people like you, that's where they go, right?
In a minute, what I'm going to do is correct something you said. When you said that the rapes that have occurred in these bathrooms are cis men.
White cis men, I should say, actually.
That isn't true. Lawden County, 2021, the big case that actually ended up flipping the state was because there was a boy who wore a skirt, went into the girl's bathroom and raped a girl in a particularly hideous way. And you know what happened? Hold on, don't cut me off. You said you wouldn't.
A cis boy. It was not a trans woman. All y'all do is go back to cis boys. You're always talking about cis.
What's the difference between a cis boy and a boy in a skirt that says, I'm a girl? Please let me know, Blossom, what the difference is. And it doesn't actually have to be sexual assault or rape. There's lewd and lascivious behavior. There is, exposing yourself to people publicly. We've seen that happen at a YMCA in, I forget, it's either Ohio or Iowa. You can go ahead and Google that and find that. We Spa here in Los Angeles, where a man identifying as a woman went and exposed himself to women and girls who are trying to have a nice little day at the spa, mother-daughter day at the spa. So there's example after example.
He was wearing
the fascination with trans bodies and what's happening in the bathroom. It is mostly happening.
I think you're filibustering because you don't want me to tell you what happened in the bathroom.
Who?
Me. I think you're filibustering.
No.
I think that you're distracting from the fact that a boy wearing a skirt in a girl's bathroom raped a girl.
But not a trans woman.
Well, there's no such thing as a trans woman.
Oh, yes, it is. You're looking at one right now.
I'm looking at.
You're looking at me right now. With lived experience.
I'm looking at
lived experience. You are looking at a trans woman who has been transitioning for over 20 years, who has lived experience.
Yes.
You're talking to an activist here.
But your identity is not grounded in reality.
You're talking to somebody that's extreme. Oh, I am reality.
I'm not really talking to anyone because you keep talking over me.
In your head, I'm not, but I am in reality.
Okay, I find I really struggle. And Jubilee, I might be calling you out a little bit here. I struggle to believe that there is even a single leftist at Jubilee who watches something that Blossom has to say and thinks this is somebody who needs to be in further videos. This has got to be just for click factor at this point. It's got to be for the view count. It's got to be that this is an individual that riles up like controversy and gets people commenting and clicking, because there's no valid reason that Blossom should be in these rooms anymore based on her performance while she's in the room and how she treats people she's speaking to, and after she's in the room where she goes on to lie about people who she's conversed with. It's just absolutely wild to think that this individual is a pillar of the trans community that is consistently used in videos like this to make arguments for transgender ideology.
Yeah.
I'm here in front of you right now talking to you.
You're confused about your identity.
No, you are confused at the fact that you don't really have any talking points right now because then why
aren't you letting me speak?
You really don't.
If I have nothing to say, why aren't you letting me speak?
Put me on your show. How about that?
Then it would
It's just got to be a jumping point that Blossom uses to get some other place where he can be viewed by other people screaming and making the same, not even making arguments, just making baseless claims.
Become your show,
that?
I think.
Oh, yeah, I should have a show. I should have a show.
In 2018, there were 2 rapes in bathrooms, and one in Wisconsin, one in Georgia.
From men.
Also
Cis
because
men,
of the transgender identity.
But say it, cis men.
If
cis men.
if you're going to describe a boy who wears a skirt and goes into a girl's bathroom as a cis man, no, I didn't.
No, you are. This is the example that you run to. Past that, you have nothing.
I've just given you 3 examples.
Nothing.
I've given you 3 examples in recent years.
I wish we would just cut the shit right now and say, what's the difference between a cis man and a trans woman? Please, please give me a valid difference between these 2 things.
No, you've been struggling this entire time.
To me, have I?
Yeah, you have.
I think the trans lady doth protest too much, methinks.
Bye. Goodbye.
Doth protest too much.
Perhaps I'll see you on my show.
Yes, invite me.
Yeah.
Get my email. Tell your people to get my email address. How about that?
Yeah.
Good job.
And you know Michael will probably do it. And this is going to be the next jumping point. Ay,
Hello.
Hi. Okay, so if we're gonna think about women getting raped in bathrooms, right? It's a small percentage of trans people that are doing it. I'm not denying that that's happening because it is a reality and it's an awful thing for women to have to go through.
I can appreciate that. So now you have a trans person saying, yes, there are people with trans identities who go on to sexually assault women. And at the very least, I can commend that admission.
Yeah.
But then what are we doing about the men that are the 93% of sexual violence towards women?
No, hopefully arresting them and putting them in prison.
And what are you doing before that? Why are men the highest percentage for this? If it's such a bad thing for trans women to use the bathroom when a very, very, very small amount of women are being raped by trans.
You know, 2 issues can exist at once, and we can do work on both of those issues at once. Just because men, meaning I guess cis men in this case, as this individual would refer to them, also sexually assault and rape women, doesn't mean we don't address the fact that transgender identifying individuals are also doing the same thing. We can do 2 things at once. And you know, a way in which we safeguard women from being sexually assaulted and raped by men, we don't allow men to go in their bathrooms. Imagine that. We label the bathrooms male and female. And if a man goes into the woman's bathroom, you can call law enforcement or security and say, hey, a man just came into my bathroom. But now with this legislation, you cannot do that if we are going to have protections for men identifying as women to go to these bathrooms.
Trans women, why are we not having any sort of things before that for men?
I think we try to enforce our laws and protect people from rape. And so we take...
Apparently not very well.
No, I think relatively well. We have a relatively low rate of these kinds of violent crimes compared to other places in the world. But in one area, we're talking about men forcing themselves into women's bathrooms. This is one area where we don't need to allow them to do that. It's a needless risk. It's based on a false view of reality and claims of rights, so-called rights, from confused men that infringe on the legitimate rights of women, not just in bathrooms, but also in sports competitions. Also.
Absolutely, before he continues on. It's kind of like when we're talking about immigration and like something like what happened to Laken Riley, a devastating, horrific crime. She's murdered while out on her daily run in the morning by an illegal migrant. And people go, we need to do something about illegal immigration. And somebody raises their hands and goes, well, excuse me, you know, American citizens murder young girls as well. Why aren't we doing anything about the American citizens murdering young girls? And you go, well, wait a second, we should most definitely care about that. And if you can prove that somebody's committed a homicide, I hope they get their due process and go through our criminal justice system. But also we have a completely preventable crime here, which is an illegal migrant who was able to cross our border and then go on to murder an American citizen. So maybe we can address 2 things at once, and your argument doesn't quite make sense. Wemby agrees. You hear him in the background.
So in scholarships, also in just about anywhere else in society. So I think that we have the right to insist upon some kind of reality, because I think not only will that be better for women, not only will that be better for society broadly, but that especially will be better for the individuals who are confused about their gender identity.
And how are you going to prevent trans women from using the female bathroom? How are you going to tell? What's the tea?
There are some giveaways,
okay.
Contrary to what the trans activists
and what are
say.
I mean, so in many cases, you have self-identified trans people who have not undergone medical transitioning, and they just sure as shit look like a man right in front of you. In other cases, you have people who are on their way to transitioning or somewhere in that process, and they still look like men and are identifiable. In this person's case, I can identify that you're a trans individual by your voice, and if I probed further and asked you, are you a trans-identifying individual, you'd probably confirm that for me, as it is an important part of your identity. So 9 times out of 10, we can clock it. Now, of course, there are going to be trans individuals who have gone so far into their medical transition that you probably can't tell whether or not they're a woman or a man, and they'll go into a bathroom, they'll do their business in the woman's bathroom, and in many cases, maybe you would hope they wouldn't even go to a male bathroom because of how much they look like a woman. There's always going to be gray area within ideology and within legislation when we put forth new rules as to how we are to associate with one another and how we are to behave with one another within a society. However, if I see a 6'4" bearded man who's done no effort whatsoever to transition and he's trying to go into the women's bathroom, I think we can go, hold up a second, you're in fact not a woman, go to your designated area. And if we can at least as a society agree that that's the general rule that should apply in these instances, we'll be doing a lot better than we're doing right now.
Men who identify as women, you can usually tell.
And what are they? You can say you can tell all you want.
Yeah, you know, broad shoulders,
for the
Adam's
most part.
apple, and
Okay.
you know, like the face, and yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Are we going to act like we didn't clock that immediately, that this is a trans individual? I mean, you're on the higher end, on the better end of the result of medical transition, but it's clear that you're a trans individual. I'm sorry. We did not need the hair flip and the show of the neck to know.
You can tell. You can usually tell.
Usually.
And Michael's just being respectful and saying, you know, you can usually tell. I don't need to be disrespectful right now and call you out and say that I know that you're a biological male right now, but I'll be respectful and say you can usually tell.
All the time, but usually, yeah.
Okay. So if you can only usually tell, what are you going to do to prevent it?
Well, look, a man who doesn't even identify as trans, a man who's just a nefarious fellow could sneak into a woman's bathroom.
Exactly.
And so we have to enforce the law.
93%, because
Right,
what are you doing about men?
We should enforce the law against people who break it.
And what are you doing before that? Like, why is it a continuous pattern for men
we teach
to do
people
this?
in class.
You're not teaching them very well, apparently. I mean, we have Republican parties who are literally putting a president who is a felon who has sexually assaulted people. What does that say to men?
Yeah, no one really buys that.
I bought it.
No one really buys that. No one seriously thinks that Donald Trump is a rapist. I know we
Right,
pretend
okay.
because the Democrats were trying to prosecute him 4 different ways and kicking him off the.
If rape is such a bad thing, why don't you believe women when they say it's happening?
It's just always like a skirt over to another argument, skirt over to another argument. I'm going to jump over here because he got me here and he had something to say here, so I'm going to jump over here and blah, 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 blah. And I'm going to hope that in all the different arguments that I throw at this man, he's not going to be able to catch me. And he's caught him every time. I'm sorry. He's got him every time.
Happening because you're not believing Trump when he says that he didn't do it. You're, whatever, but you're not believing the woman.
Yeah, the claim you're
who said
making
that he
about
did.
Trump obviously was not criminally prosecuted. It comes from about 30 years ago from a woman who previously said that she likes rape and finds it, scintillating.
Gross.
And I know it's terrible. So anyway,
Yeah, no woman has ever said that.
Except Jeannie Carroll. She did say that. You can look her up. And you can look up anything that Jeannie Carroll has had to say about this run-in she had with Donald Trump. And you guys let me know if you think she's reputable. You can also look up the news clip where she spoke about how she's going to be spending the money that she would win in this case against Donald Trump for this alleged sexual assault. Let me know.
That woman did. The Trump's accuser literally said that to Anderson Cooper on CNN. But,
Sure, I'm sure a fetish with like consenting adults might be different, but no woman knowingly goes out into this world and says, I love to be raped.
I'm just using the
men.
example you brought up, which is the accuser of Donald Trump. But anyway, no one really believes Trump's a rapist. And so your question is, why don't we... Okay, I guess maybe some people in this room. You ask, why don't we just believe all women all the time? Well, I do think we should give a lot of deference to people who are accusing others of crimes. And so, we have courts of law to adjudicate these claims. So I don't know. I don't think women are incapable of lying, but I do think that we should protect their legitimate political
Even when
rights.
women do lie, though, it's a very, very, very small percentage. Point blank period. So What
your
again are you
points?
doing? Like, you care to claim about women so much because trans people in the bathroom is so scary.
My claim
What
here
are we doing
is
in other areas?
my actual claim here is that transgenderism is false, and we should eradicate it from public life because it's harmful to everyone.
Okay.
That's my actual. If you want to talk about the claim, we're actually.
And then it's just like, ooh, there's something that really gets me going here, and I'm gonna go ahead and say it. The fact that so far we've had two men, biological men, try to argue from the standpoint of women about women's safety, women's privacy, and women's protection. Two individuals that no matter how hard they work their entire life, they are never going to understand what it's like to be a woman who feels unsafe. It's absolutely ridiculous to give this the time of day. You get to have some sort of pedestal where you talk about our safety in the bathroom, how we feel in our private spaces, how we feel about our rights and our spaces being protected, and you are not one of us, and I'm so sorry, you will never be. So let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room before we move forward. This is insulting, quite frankly.
That then.
Yeah.
What does transgenderism in public look like to you?
It's allowing men to be treated for the purposes of the law as women. It's men taking 900 sports trophies from women in recent years.
They didn't take 900.
They took 900. There's a report just came out from the United Nations, actually. 890 trophies and medals.
We all trust the UN, don't we?
Across 600 women who were competitors, across 29 different sports and 400 competitions. That came out like yesterday.
And they deserved them.
Oh my God.
It didn't happen, and they deserve them. Okay,
Dude, that was the fastest turnover from it didn't happen to they deserve them I've seen in a very, if ever, like in a very, very long time. I think that's that's the fastest turnaround yet on that issue. It didn't happen, which means you know deep down it's not okay to, well, they deserve them. Okay.
is the logic I hear from the pro-trans crowd. Yeah.
Thank you. They do deserve them
There you
because
go.
I'm sure they followed the specifications for the sport, and that's why they're there in the first place.
You've been voted out by the majority.
And let's be honest, these people are making super shit arguments. And the fact that they're not being voted out sooner by this circle of individuals is purely based on their identity. It's because we must give trans people the floor, even if everything they're saying is utter BS, because their identity places them on this pedestal of being given the time to speak. They must speak. They must have the floor. You would have been voted off in 2 seconds if you were a white man going up to Michael Knowles to make these arguments, but because you're a trans woman, we have to let you just speak your foreign language to us and make these baseless arguments about nothingness for as long as you feel like.
Hello.
Hello. So I think I want to start off by asking you what your solution is to, like, the word eradicating. Like,
Yeah.
what do you mean by that?
Well, the word
Not again. I knew it was 3 in a row, but just to see it happen again, it's not again.
literally means to pull up by the root. So not just to have some half measure where you say, you know, okay, we're only going to trans kids after the age of 9, but not under the age of 9. Okay, we're only going to let men who identify as women go into this bathroom, but not that sports team or whatever. I don't think a half measure makes any sense. In fact, I think a lot of the conservative arguments.
You're not answering my question. What's the solution?
He did actually, in fact, answer your question. Or he was on the way to before you interrupted him, which... Never mind. Let me shut my mouth. Let me shut up.
It means
how
to
do you-
uproot it. We didn't.
So
we,
how
we,
do you do that? I want to know how you're going to uproot an entire percentage of people.
I'm not uprooting people. I would return American public law to what it was before roughly 2015.
I don't understand the perspective of how you or the Conservative Party is going to make any sort of progress in eradicating an entire percentage. I think it's just
We're not eradicating people. You're trying to say that because it makes us
That's
look
what
crazy.
you're saying.
Exactly.
No, I said I want to eradicate a whole ideology of transgenderism.
Trans people. That is going to be people that you are
No,
taking.
like if I want to.
Please, again, if this was a white man, all the flags would be up. You'd be voted out because you're not engaging with the logical centers of your brain. He's not saying he wants to eradicate people. It's a very clever argument that the left would use to make somebody like him appear to be, they're calling him a Nazi. it's whatever phrase you want to use, a fascist, a Nazi, a eugenicist, or whatever. He's saying, I want to get rid of the idea of transgenderism, the gender theory that is backing that idea. Things like a critical race theory or critical feminist theory that help these things push through further, that help them propagate within society. These are the ideas that we must eradicate. It doesn't mean if you're a transgender individual, he wants to take you out back and pull an old Yeller. That's clearly not what he's saying.
To eradicate poverty, that doesn't mean I want to kill all the poor people.
I'm not, saying,
quite the opposite,
I'm not saying that you want to kill. I'm asking you what your plan, like what in the best case scenario, how are you going to get people to stop being trans?
I think we're going to tell boys that they're not girls,
so we're
that they're
going to
boys.
tell boys that they're not girls, and they're going to listen.
Yeah, basically.
Really?
Yeah, that's what we've done for most of history.
That happened to me, and I can promise you to God that I didn't listen.
Yeah, well, because we live at a time that is affirming the transgender delusion. But if we lived at a more sensible time, probably you would have listened, and you might have had some. And I think we should just return to a more sensible kind of politics.
But what is yours? You're not giving a solution on how you would even be capable of doing something.
Yeah, I think I am. I think we kicked the fellas out of the boys' bathroom. We kicked the transgender teaching out of schools.
How are you going to do that?
We just enforced the law as it was before 2015.
There was a law prohibiting trans women to go into the women's bathroom.
You can't even understand. Like, the very thing that he's saying about eradication is just absolutely amazing. Do you now, a person identifying as a woman, not even a woman, but do you want to eradicate patriarchy? I imagine your answer would be yes. Does this mean you want to kill all men that view themselves as patriarchs? Maybe the leftists do actually want to eradicate patriarchy in that sense. But does that mean you want to go out and kill entire groups of people and create mass death in the name of eradicating patriarchy? I don't think so. I don't think that's the move that you want to go through. So can we understand what he means when he's saying eradicate transgenderism? And if not, then maybe this is not the video for you to participate in.
Are trans men going into the men's bathroom?
Yeah, it's there in the term women's bathroom.
That's a law.
That's why men can't go in.
That's a law.
Yeah. Yes, there are all sorts of laws against public indecency, for one, against men going into women's sports leagues. There are all sorts of regulations against that, or at least there were until recently. We did not have established in public life transgenderism until very, very recently.
That's not true.
That is true.
That's not true. You can't argue with people who are not willing to meet you where you're at and agree on what the facts are of the topic that you are discussing. And not a single individual so far that we've gone through in this video out of the 3 has met him on a fact that he's given and said, you know what, that's true. Except the person who said it's not happening, but they deserve it. That was where he was met on a fact. And even then, we couldn't find common ground on the issue.
True. What about the two-spirited people?
What is the two-spirited people?
In the indigenous community, they are...
He's baiting this individual. Of course, he knows what a two-spirit is.
I don't want to get into semantics, but I know that the fact is that there has always been trans people.
Do you know where the phrase two-spirited came from?
I don't. Please enlighten me.
It came from the 3rd annual Intertribal Native American First Nations Gay and Lesbian Americans Conference in 1990. And the woman who coined that term...
I just don't think that that's true.
It's true. The woman who coined that term...
Fact check. Even fact check by Jubilee. True. 1990. It's kind of like when people are like, when you go to school and everybody's meant to believe that Kwanzaa is this super huge holiday, and you leave American public school and you're like, wow, Black people celebrate Kwanzaa. If you're Black, Kwanzaa is the thing that you're celebrating, and then you look into it and it's just a made up holiday by some academic professor in San Francisco, decades ago. It's nothing of note or merit. Sorry to those of you who celebrate Kwanzaa, but this is exactly what's happening with this whole two-spirit argument. And still, that is not an example of any sort of legislation, which is what we were talking about with Michael prior to this two-spirit argument being brought up.
Term admitted. Hold on. Let me just finish my point on this. The woman who coined that term, Maya Laramie, admitted somewhat recently that the term two-spirit came to her in a dream in 1990. Now, the Ojibwe Nation actually has translated this term. It's the Niche Mani Duwag, but they translated it from the English in 1990.
How you're capable of eradicating an entire percentage of people by setting laws, because
And because we've been caught on every single argument that we've made thus far trying to discredit him, we retreat back to the initial argument, which is you are a Nazi eugenicist and you want to kill trans people, even though you've stated on multiple occasions now that that is in no way, shape, or form your goal. It's just amazing.
You're not. I think you're choosing not to hear what I'm saying, because I'm saying we don't want to eradicate any people. We want to eradicate
in the prompt?
But the other word is transgenderism, which is an ideology, not a group of people.
I am a transgender person. You can't just
you are
skip
a confused
over that
person, but
I'm
you're not,
babe. I'm so secure in myself, and there's other women in this room that are also trans, have been trans for 20 plus years, 7 years, babe, that know exactly what they're doing.
You're confused because it's not possible for a man to become a woman.
Somebody without knowing their bodily autonomy, knowing anything that's going on with their medical history, anything.
Because I know,
you know nothing
I know
about
the
me.
basics of human nature.
You know nothing about me.
I know that you're human. And I know a little bit about human nature. And I know that a boy can't become a girl. So that's what I know.
Does anybody want to take over?
You're tapping out.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're tapping out. Yeah. Does anybody want to take my seat? Which is what you do. You retreat when you don't have an argument that's to be made in this. And you were so, like, just in every single way, shape, or form, you were called out and brought to task over all the arguments that you wanted to make. And here's the thing, and I've just found this to be the case in my time being a leftist and, you know, in my time now outside of that camp and being on the center right of things, you have to be well-versed as somebody on the right in every single argument that somebody on the left is going to make, every single way in which they're going to call you a Nazi, eugenicist, racist, sexist. They do not have to be well-versed in your arguments at all, which is why these people get just slammed every single time that somebody on the right shows up to debate them on virtually any given issue. And I commend Michael Knowles for going head-to-head with 3 transgender individuals on the idea of transgenderism and on that now infamous quote of it being eradicated from public life. And, you know, it was 3-0 on that. They lost in dramatic fashion, traumatic fashion. I'm sure they're all going to carry this as a trauma with them for the rest of their lives. They had to debate a Nazi on Jubilee, which I hope that people on the left just got into this video, listened to Michael Knowles, and realized that he's being perfectly reasonable on this topic of transgenderism and gender theory. And that's all I've got to say. We knew what Blossom was going to do. I didn't know what the 2 others were going to do. And I am in no way, shape, or form surprised by the outcome or the arguments brought forth by the biological men who are pretending to be women. Guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. As always, if you disagree with anything I said in this video, do get out, but do so respectfully. We encourage healthy debate on this channel. And if you like this video, like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single time I post a video for you guys, which is every day. And I will see you next time. We never run out of things to talk about on this topic, guys. Bye.